Good evening and welcome to tonight's segment of Crossing the Divide. Tonight we're going to ask the very direct question: do town officials and residents of Winchester have the will and courage to address the financial reality that we're currently facing? Ken and I attended a budget meeting on Thursday, and quite a few facts came out on the table that certainly are going to, what I feel, will direct the discussions pretty specifically over the next couple weeks. And as always, my name is Glenn Amnesius. I'm joined by Ken Fracasso. Ken, you're going to run through some numbers for us and kind of get the program started here.
Okay, thank you. We have a lot of numbers here, so bear with us. I think the first thing that we need to talk about is how did we come to have no fund balance? There's three main ingredients here. The fact that we spent money that was not budgeted, no revenues were raised. We have a town debt of $800,000 per year that no revenues were raised, and like I said, that occurred for many years. And the fund balance that we once had and all the cash in various accounts were used to pay for these unbudgeted debt services. And that's part of the reason that we're in the deficit that we have right now. However, in addition to that, as Glenn stated, on Thursday night we had our first, I guess we call it a budget workshop meeting. We were informed that there was a letter that went to OPM in response to a meeting that was held, I believe it was on February 7th. And in that presentation letter, whatever you want to call it, that town manager and our interim finance director put forth, it shows an estimated shortfall of between $1 and $1.2 million in this fiscal year. I repeat that. It's between $1 million and $1.2 million deficit that they are expecting, a cash shortfall in this fiscal year, which ends June 30th. Along those same lines, more bad news was the fact that, I asked directly if in fact we had spent $1.2 million in this year's revenues to pay for last year's Board of Ed deficit, and the answer was yes. So the outcome of that is we have absolutely no cash whatsoever left. And just to add to the hurt is the fact that we have $800,000 that was not budgeted for debt service. So if you add all those numbers up, we're looking at roughly $3.5 million deficit. So that's not good news.
It isn't. And I think the point that we want to make tonight, and be pretty clear with the viewers, is that in the context of the upcoming budget discussion, Ken and I are going to take a pretty solid stand that before we get to any capital projects or new spending, in order for us to get our financial house in order, we need to address the budget shortfall and the deficits and put our financial house in order. Ken, you and I have talked at length that it's an unpopular position to kind of do this tough love act, but without doing this and addressing this the right way, it is going to be a potential disaster for this town. And it's not anything that Ken and I like to come here each week or sit on the board and have to listen to it and address constantly, but it is the reality that this town is facing. We have a significant financial problem at hand, and as it relates specifically to the budget, if we don't make the restoration of funds in the fund balance, address the bonding, funding in the budget, we are going to run the real risk of the state coming in and taking us over. And as we've said time and time again, Ken, we cannot allow that to happen.
No.
The ramifications of that will be swift and severe. So as we assume OPM is telling us when they meet with Dale and the finance team, get your house in order, get it done quickly, swiftly, and efficiently, and let us take care of state business. And I certainly hope that you and I are going to be part of the equation that allows that to happen. I mean, the meeting the other night was interesting on a whole bunch of levels, but I think the takeaway was that we need to address the shortfalls as an important part of the upcoming budget.
Right. Well, there's a few things about that and how we proceed. Dale has asked for input, the town manager, has asked for input on, what he thinks we as a board of selectmen think. Glenn and I have both come up with 3 basic plans. We've asked them to look at the possibility of partial or full privatization of some of the services. We asked them to look at civil service was on the table, I want to say probably a year ago. And I know that we've had our not town attorney, but
Labor attorney.
labor attorney,
Right.
thank you, look into that. And it was basically voted down by the majority that they didn't want to pursue it any farther. It was brought up and then it was put to bed for whatever reason, and we won't. It is what it is. But I think it's something that needs to be looked at. But the fact is, it's our belief moving forward in this new budget, 2013-14, that the very first line item needs to be the deficit and how we're going to fund that. The second line item is how we replenish some money to the fund balance so we have some way of operating at least partially as a proper town. And the third is actually would be the rest of the budget. But the 2 most important things are the deficit and the fund balance. We need to address these 2 areas because, as I mentioned the other night, this is just going to continue to snowball, and we're going to it's just going to become a worse and worse situation as we move on. So, the proper budgeting. This water and sewer has come up again, and I guess they're looking at an 8-year plan, increasing rates. In an 8-year plan, it's not a plan. As far as I'm concerned, it's not a plan. We need to do something, different than that. But, as we move forward, if we're going to put money aside, which we need to do to cover the deficit and the fund balance, there has to be something on the other end of this equation to balance it out. And by that, I mean we need to make some reductions and we need to restructure the way that we do business. Because, once again, if we just manage the status quo, it's only going to get worse.
Right. And if you look at the budget process, I mean, there are a couple facts that, again, Ken and I kind of look at as foundation principles. And number one is, with that water and sewer, the likelihood that that plan is enacted by that commission, it's going to directly affect the users. And that's where currently the intent is to basically make the people that use the water and sewer pay for that bond debt. And the reality of that is that there's, I keep forgetting the number, 25,000, 24,000, how many users?
No, between 23 and 2,400.
2,400,
Users,
that's
right.
right. So in order for that amount of money to get, basically paid off even in an 8-year plan, it's going to be a significant increase. So as it looks, as we look at this budget and what's going to get rolled out to referendum, the fact is, I see it anyway, that we need to be as close to zero as possible because, again, it's not just the water and sewer that people that are going to, have increases, but, just in life in general, as I brought up the other night. The state's running, I think, $130 million deficit right now. We know more taxes are going to come there. Our gas prices, I mean, you'll go right on down the line.
Dry goods, groceries, everything.
Yeah, whatever people are currently making was reduced with the Social Security increase at the first of the year, so many incomes have dropped. I think the federal statistics showed that personal income had dropped significantly in the last quarter. So all these are facts that are on the table, and again, as it relates to the budget, we can't expect, and we got some agreement from the several Democrats that were in attendance the other night, that I don't think anybody on the board wants to go out to referendum 2, 3, 4 times again. I just don't think that makes sense. And the overriding view, at least with Ken and I, is that we need to keep it as close to zero as possible, while still addressing the deficit and the fund balance. The fund balance, until we get that built back up, we cannot function as a town. We can't borrow for an emergency situation, and the OPM is going to look at that as part of the formulas, in their evaluation as to how much progress the town is making. So I think that has to be part of the equation.
Right. There's a couple of things I just like to go back and touch on, and one of them is the water and sewer users. Other than the downtown area, which is residential as well as businesses, and the residents that live around Highland Lake, those are the core. Those are all the users.
Right.
I mean, you and I both live in the outskirts. we both have wells and septic systems, so, we are not users of that. Even in my garage, down off of the Winston Road, that there's no water or sewer down there. There's a well and a septic tank down there also. But the fact that they're gonna raise these rates a third or more might be enough to push some of these people right over the edge. And that's the last thing we wanna do, is to have businesses or, foreclosures and residents in either of those areas, the downtown or the lake region, because this is going to be counterproductive to what we want and need to do, just for our mere existence. So, I think we need to tread lightly there as how much more burden, we're going to put on those people. The other issue is, we came up with some ideas Thursday night. I heard nothing from the majority, which was, a little troublesome on my part. I thought that, Dale had asked 2-3 weeks ago for some direction, and here again, I mean, he's the town manager, he's the professional. I would have liked to see what he had to bring to the table. I mean, I would like to see what his understanding of this is. If he's in agreement with us, that we need to address the deficit, we need to address the fund balance, and we can't keep going on. Put $3 million in capital improvements to, for bridges and roads and things like this. I mean, I don't know if it's his inclination or idea that, we're just going to raise taxes to cover all those things, or, I mean, I don't think it's ever going to happen. No. I mean, we went down that road last year, started out with an 8-9% increase, and what did it take? 4 budgets? And even at the last one, not that we're right all the time, but for the last 2 years, neither you nor I have agreed with the budget that went forth to the taxpayers. And last year especially, we tried to put forth, what we thought was the, correct way or the proper way to do things. And, we even put a letter to the editor a few times, and, we both felt that once they got to a, quote, 0 increase, that it would pass because, people looked at it, the majority of them anyways, and thought that, well, at least it's not going to cost me more money. Mm-hmm. But we both stated that, it wasn't a realistic 0, and it wasn't. And that's part of the problem moving forward. We can't put down, expected revenues as pie in the sky numbers. I mean, we can't expect that the building department is going to bring in $160,000 or $180,000 when it hasn't done so in the past, or the town clerk's office. Here again, it's just a recipe for disappointment and disaster. Right. We need to have conservative numbers on those things. Right. And if we're lucky enough to bring in more than what we think, then so be it. I mean, there's money that we could put in a fund balance until we get our feet in the ground and get this mess straightened out. But we need to change the way that we do things. Right. And we need to do it right now.
Right. And you made a good point the other night, and pretty dramatically, that we need to make pretty dramatic changes in the way we do business. And until we start to do that, we're going to keep kicking that can down the road, as we've talked about in the past. Now, are those popular choices? Absolutely not. Are they going to be painful? Yes. And Ken and I don't sit up here and rub our hands and say, geez, how can we make it painful for any specific person or department or commission? It's not what it's all about. But we do answer to the townspeople as a whole, and that's what makes this job even more difficult. It's a small community. We all know each other. The things that we talk about, affect lives, affect families. That makes it difficult. But the bottom line is that if we don't make good, prudent financial decisions now, a lot of stuff has gotten thrown on the table the past 6 months. The whole finance director issue, the shortcomings as far as the budget amounts, the bonds of water and sewer. I mean, this has all kind of been a perfect storm. Mm-hmm. The upside is, though, and as we talk about the painful aspects of this, the upside is that if we can get these things corrected and get this stuff done and get it done right, it does move us in the direction where we can start to make those investments that we so sorely need. Right. The capital projects that, the requests that we were handed the other night, I would say probably 50% of them are absolutely necessary as soon as possible. Right. Not all of them, but, I see things here that we need to start to do, but sadly, they cannot be a priority just yet, because until we get until we get the finances in order, and Dale knows this, I know he does. I look in his eyes and I know that he understands it. He's getting pushback, I'm sure, from the other side, because I don't think they, it's harder for them to, say what we're saying, that these things have to be done. Mary Ann and Mike looked, over at us, pretty consistently through the whole meeting. Well, what ideas do you have? Where are you going? What do you want to do? And it was a repeat of things that we've thrown on the table before.
Yeah. I think we need to stop the fact that, when we look at this stuff and, after the budget's failed once or twice or three times, we painfully go back there and, we're asked, well, do you want to cut $1 from this line item or $5 from this one? I mean, it's totally not the way to do this.
Right.
We have to get away from that,
right,
because that's not going to serve anyone well. And the other thing is, the information that we received through that letter that went to OPM stating that, they expect to be $1 million to $1.2 million short in revenues for this year. Once again, I would think that they would be, Dale in the interim, director, or Dale as a town manager would have been screaming from the rooftops. It's like, this is priority number one,
right,
for, whatever reasons, this is our expectation. This is what we see happening. We need to address this right now. And I don't see that we get that. I mean, I asked both of us did, time and time again for that, information. And we were CC'd on the letter to OPM, and it was, well, here it is. And there was no alarming tone to it, and I got to admit, I'm kind of surprised, unless there was a response from OPM that we haven't seen. I would think once they got that information, that they would have sent a letter back and said, geez, what's your plan moving forward?
right.
Because there was no plan that was, talked about in that letter. So, I mean, the fact that we seem to, I don't want to use the word cover up, but it's just like hide or fail to acknowledge what's going on is only going to exasperate the problem that we're in.
Right.
I mean, we need full disclosure. We need full transparency. If we know there's a problem, let's put it out there, so we know we can talk about this and address it. Put it on the back burner or not talking about it at all.
No.
It's just another recipe for disaster.
Right. It's all hands on deck, and again, I think that you and I have been, kind of been the sole voices for, speaking about the severity of the problem and trying to offer some suggestions. And listen, as I said, the other night, if the facts that come back to us don't support what we've thrown out there, it would be foolish on our part to say, let's do something that isn't going to work. That doesn't make any sense at all. But we have to put some ideas on the table that come back to us. And again, Dale being the professional, that's who I would have anticipated that would have had some detail to the responses. Jim Rotundo, again, great report at the end addressing the privatization issue. He pretty much said it wasn't going to work in Winstead. Well, why?
Right.
What are the reasons why? Or could, partial, discussion have happened with some facts and figures? And again, that's the part that, even civil service, I've had sidebar conversations with Dale, and even Wayne in his exit letter said it's an archaic system of firing. It's time to do away with it. Now, is it a lot of money? It isn't. But in the big picture, $16,000, $20,000 is money that we need to allocate to,
Other things, right.
other things right now.
And I firmly believe that department head, whether it's Public Works or the police chief, I think that's part of their job. And they have the knowledge and the know-how, to hire personnel.
Right.
That's my thought.
Right.
The fact that most other towns in the state of Connecticut do not have a civil service, and they seem to function all right.
Sure.
It's just, I think that's something that's an extra layer of bureaucracy that we don't need.
Right, we had the discussion, and again, like you said, Attorney Ryan was there to explain to us what the process was going to be to make that charter change and eliminate it. And Mr. Delaney, to his credit, went in, defended his department and commission, and we had the meeting, and I emailed Dale afterwards, and I said, Dale, is this going anywhere? Can you find out and at least determine from the majority if they'd be willing to pursue this? And he came back and he said, Glenn, not at this time. So again, as you and I have said repeatedly here, we're 2 votes out of a, you know, 7-member board. We're the minority. The voters of the town, you know, positioned things the way they did. You know, part of the reason we continue to do this show, we're looking to find out if we have support for the opinions and views that we represent. We feel pretty strongly that the only way out of this, you know, mess and disaster is to do the things, make the hard, difficult choices that need to be made. We're looking for support. If we can, you know, gather people together that are willing to, you know, be part of the fix, that's what we're trying to encourage to happen here. We want to hear from people. You know, if you support us, you know, talk to us, you know, communicate with us.
Right.
Come to our meetings, call us, whatever. We feel pretty strongly that the only way out is to address these things head on. Ken has talked in detail that, you know, these things have to happen sooner than later, so.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that's a good point, Glenn. I mean, if what we're saying resonates, you know, with someone out there, you know, call us, talk to us on the street, come to an RTC meeting if you'd like. I mean, you know, voice your opinions, email, text, whatever. But, I mean, because, you know, this is, I mean, we are in a tough position, but, you know, we're both giving it our best shot at, you know, trying to rectify this situation. And, you know, as we stated earlier, these are tough decisions. But, you know, we have to base these on the good for the whole, not for, you know, just a few. And
as I mentioned before, too, if we get this done and get this accomplished, have some kind of plan to get us out of the weeds over the next couple of years, then we get to that point where we've talked about a million times about the reinvesting, you know, getting the downtown growing and all the things that have, you know, been on our plate for quite some time. But the urgency is to fix the problems at hand right now.
yeah, and, you know, I just want to touch a little bit more on this, you know, getting this financial information and some transparency out there. You know, if not for the fact that we got that letter from Dennehy, and was it late November, December, that, you know, they were $4 million in the hole. I mean, here again, that's something that I believe that the Board of Selectmen should have been apprised of ahead of time. And, you know, I've mentioned this in previous shows. I've mentioned it at Board of Selectmen meetings. The fact that we went through this deficit in end of November, early December, it's going to reoccur. We're going to see this again. I would not be surprised if at this very moment, we're in the first week of March now, that we aren't struggling to pay some debts. I would be extremely surprised, because the cycle's reoccurring now. You know, we're always taking money, you know, in the future to try to catch up with debt from the past, and this is going to come back. If we had this in December, we're going to have it again, March, April, May. You know, it's going to reoccur. And these are the reasons that we need to address this situation now, because, like I said earlier, if this continues to snowball, it's going to go from 3 million to 5 million to 8 million to 10 million to whatever. And at some point, I don't know what the date is, I don't know what the number is, but with OPM looking over our shoulder, it's just a matter of time before they show up, and then it's game over.
Right.
Because they're going to come in here and they're going to say, this is what you got to pay, and it's going to be swift. They're not going to do this over 5 years or 8 years or 10 years. They're not going to put us on a payment plan. So, once again, I know that we've said this before, and I'm going to continue to say this. We need to address these problems and fix them ourselves.
Right.
We cannot wait for someone else to come in and do this, or it's going to be more painful than you want to realize.
Right. And the water and sewer fix, you know, it looks like the commission is leaning towards the 8-year plan, and again, that's their purview. But even at that, you know, 8 years is a long time to you know, even at that gets us, you know, back to being whole. But that is, you know, 8 years is a long time. It's not the quick fix that.
Well, once again, we're not in agreement with that either, but I mean, it's roughly $400,000 a year, you know, to try to repay some of that stuff. But in the meantime, I mean, how are they going to operate? So, I mean, if the town's plan is to take the money that they raise through water and sewer to pay off the debt and some past debt, because, you know, now we have to replenish all that's come out.
Right.
That was used to pay those debt bonds, and they can't operate. So what do? So the town's going to lend them money to operate? I mean, it's just, we're just passing stuff back and forth,
Right.
and we're not getting ahead of the curve here at all.
Exactly. So the broader discussion that we've talked about is, you know, is there some, you know, at least discussion about whether the entire town, you know, looks to help each other and you know, lessen that potential burden on the users that are going to get faced with either the 4 or 8 year you know, fix. And again, as we've said time and time again, you know, the impact of, you know, a 200, 300, or 400 a year increase, with some of our families and residents here in town, that is going to be significant. We have to be cognizant of that. We have to understand that.
Right.
That, making those users, pay the bill, foot the bill. I mean, that, it's an option, but is it the best option?
Well, and here again, we've brought this up in previous meetings, in selectmen meetings, and in TV shows. Make no mistake, these are obligations, these debt obligations are of the town. So, if water and sewer fails for some reason, we still are responsible for this. And I likened it to, your son or daughter wanting to buy a car and, asking dad or mom or both to co-sign.
Right.
I mean, if they don't make it, we're on the hook for it. And it's no different here. If for some reason they falter or for whatever reason, we have water main breaks, hydrant repair, whatever, and they can't make those bond payments, the town's responsible for
Exactly, right.
it. And that's something that needs to be budgeted for just in case. Because we cannot keep going down this path of not properly budgeting and then running the risk of ending up right where we are today.
Right, exactly. Which is what we definitely want to avoid, and we want to make it clear that, Ken and I are, part of, obviously the Board of Selectmen, that, a lot of things have come to light. There have been obviously some bad decisions made in the past. We need to recognize those, and I think we're in the process of doing that. But any attempt to hide, what's going on or not acknowledge it, it's a disservice to, the boards, a disservice to the town, the taxpayers, the residents. We need to, take a full view of what's happened and make the right decisions to get us out of the situation we're in.
Well, I think we're running out of time, but once again, we would like to ask, if you have some ideas or comments, good, bad, or indifferent, please contact either Glenn or I, write us a note, drop a line, come to the selectmen's meeting, speak out in public comment, or, come to an RTC meeting. Let your voices be heard, because after all, it's you, the taxpayers, that are going to foot the bill for whatever comes forth.
Absolutely, and again, to add to what Ken just said, we have begun to hear from people, and obviously there's going to be some more detailed discussions with people who have contacted us. But that's how this whole process is going to take place and move forward. So we take your comments and your thoughts and your concerns seriously. We don't take this job lightly. I know Ken pretty well, and there are many times where we kind of shake our heads and wonder what we've gotten ourselves into. But the bottom line is we're both very optimistic that through all this we will come out on top. And I want everybody that views the show to know that we do hold out hope that this is going to work out the way it should. It's going to take some work and some effort, obviously, and some pain, but we're confident we're going to get where we need to be.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you very much.